Edition of What's Up Wednesday with Nina Kucheran as our prize guest. Those of you that may know, Nina is from Sudbury. She is the current team captain of the Florida State. Is it the women's team or the whole team, Nina?
Just women's.
The women's, and is staying home in Canada to prepare for the Olympic trials, and is enjoying her time here with us. So, without further ado, welcome, Nina.
Thank you guys for having me. I've loved training with Max so far, and I look forward to meeting more of you in the future. Did you want me to just get started on like a little introduction, Sean?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So as Sean mentioned, I'm from Sudbury, Ontario. I don't know if a lot of people know where that is. I feel like some people do and some people don't always, but it's a town up north. It's like 5 hours north of here. Really cold, really great though, love it. So I started swimming there when I was 8. And I swam for most of my club career with Dean Hensey. I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he's the head coach of the Sudbury Laurentian Swim Club. So yeah, I grew up swimming in Sudbury, made my first Olympic trials in 2016, just I guess some kind of highlights. And then unfortunately I was injured pretty bad in high school. So that kind of set me back a little bit mentally and physically. But then I went on to qualify for Junior Pan Pacs in 2018 and also the Youth Olympic Games in 2018. So on the junior national team, and I'm a breaststroker. So that was a great experience getting to represent Canada. And again, in grade 12, I decided I wanted to go to school in the US. So I took a bunch of recruiting trips and ended up committing to Florida State University, where I attended in 2018. And I did 2 years there. I had a great freshman year. NCAA qualifier and ACC silver medalist, and broke the school record, which was really awesome. And then unfortunately my sophomore year got cut a little bit short due to COVID and everything. And from then on, I came home last March and remained training in Sudbury last semester, and then decided after swimming with Markham for a few weeks in the summer, Sean was awesome to have me while our pools were still shut down in Sudbury. So I trained with Markham for a few weeks then, and decided to come back to Markham Aquatic Club in January, I guess, and I'm sticking around until trials. So loving the training here and the group, and it's been awesome so far. So that's a little snapshot of my swim career, I guess.
And staying on for the Olympics, you forgot.
Yeah, here until Olympic trials for sure.
Right. Got to put the imagery out there. So to get started, Nina, just a couple of things. Can you talk about your experience for the Junior Pan Pacs, and just tell the audience where it was, the length of flight, kind of some interesting things with that whole trip, and how you did.
Yeah, so that was I remember that year I was in grade 12, and that was a really exciting time because I had been putting in a lot of work for, I guess, like years leading up to the trials that year, and hadn't seen much result. And it's funny enough, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Sean, but I can actually remember that trials in Montreal, finishing my 2 breasts, and I think I dropped 7 seconds or something, and I went at 2:28 in the morning. And I remember seeing Sean on the sideline. He was actually the first person who I saw after that race. But that was the race that qualified me for Junior Pan Pacs. And so the meet was in Fiji, which is a dream. It was so beautiful. For those of you who don't know where that is, I actually don't even know where that is. It's like in the middle of the ocean, close to Australia, I think. I'm not really sure, but very tropical, beautiful. And it was really exciting. I loved all of my teammates at that time. I knew a few people from camps and stuff, so it was really fun. The travel was exciting, but really, really long. I think the plane ride was 11 hours. So I remember being a little bit nervous about that because obviously you're sitting for a long period of time. So I was trying to like get up and stretch throughout the flight and kind of loosen up. But that experience was absolutely incredible. I got to work with a lot of really awesome coaches at Junior Pan Pacs, and I actually got to bring Dean along with me. So my club coach was there, which was really nice for me as my first junior team to have him there. And the meet was super exciting, and I ended up going another best time, and I got a silver medal in the 100 breaststroke and also a silver medal in the 4x100 medley relay, and got to swim that relay with Maggie McNeil. I'm sure you guys are familiar with her now. She won Worlds last summer. So that was kind of like my first introduction of really getting to train and compete and be on teammates with some really elite people and represent Canada, which was awesome.
Okay, so I just pulled up Fiji just for you here. So it's in the country of Oceania. So Fiji, a country in the South Pacific, is an archipelago of more than 300 islands. It's famed for rugged landscapes, palm-lined beaches, and coral reefs with clear lagoons. Its major island, Viti Levu, is that what it is? Contain most of the population. So there you go.
It was beautiful. I wish we got the chance to see a little bit more than just the pool and the hotel, but we did get to go to the beach one day, and obviously you're there to swim, so that's kind of what you got to focus on. But I would love to go back one day and like see more things because it was a beautiful country for sure.
So what did you learn from your experience?
I learned so much from that experience. I think that was one of my first times traveling with a really, really big team, because swimming in Sudbury, going off to some of those like higher level meets like nationals and stuff, it was usually me and only a few other people. So that was my first experience being on a really big team. I think the biggest thing I took away from that meet was I had some really great swims. My 100 breast was awesome. The relay was awesome. And I also had some not so great swims. I'd been training and looking to go like a 226 in my 200 breast, a best time. And unfortunately, I think in the finals, I was second the whole time. And then some people passed by me on the last 50 and ended up getting fourth. And I think I touched out a 229. And the biggest thing I learned from that was when you're on a big team like that, you can't let your swims get to you. Whereas maybe previously, if it was just me at a meet, I would have maybe sulked a little bit longer and maybe like felt bad for myself. But when you're with a big team like that and representing your country, like when you have those bad swims, you really have to be able to like recognize what went wrong, talk with your coach, learn some things from it, but then kind of put it behind you and really put your best foot forward to be able to support your teammates. So that was definitely the biggest thing I think I learned from that meet, because that was my first time really having an experience with a team like that.
Interesting. So question popped up. What is an experience that you thought was negative at the time that you can now see as positive?
From that meet?
It's just saying, what's an experience that you thought was a negative one at the time that you can now see as a positive experience in general?
If I'm thinking about an experience that was negative at the time, but that I can now draw some positives from, I think I mentioned earlier, like I was injured pretty bad in high school. I ended up breaking every bone in my left foot and hurting my back pretty bad. So that put me out of the water for about 2 months when I was in grade 9. And at the time, obviously, that was a really, really negative situation. I was really upset. I had been swimming well. I was looking forward to Pan Am trials and stuff like that. But looking back, I think there's actually a lot of positives that came from that situation, because I really learned the value of mental resilience. And I'm sure, although I know it's a different situation, but I'm sure this can relate to some of you guys who may have been out of the water for a long time. I was super frustrated to be out of the water and not be able to swim, but I learned the value of finding other things other than swimming to keep myself, I guess, like physically active during that time. So I had been doing some core workouts, some tubing, anything I could pretty much do with a cast on my foot. So looking back, definitely that now there's some positives I can draw from that. And it's that even though I wasn't swimming at the time, when I was able to hop back in 2 months later, it only took me a lot less time than I thought to get back in shape. And I was competing at nationals again that summer, medaling and stuff like that. So I think definitely mental resilience and recognizing that just because I was out of the water didn't mean that I had to fall behind. So that's definitely a situation that I think was negative, but now I can draw some positives from.
Great. And so waiting for more questions that are coming in. Your first experience at Florida State. How did the first few months go? How did the rest of the season go? Kind of give us a little snapshot on that experience.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was really excited going into my freshman year because I felt like I was coming off this huge high. I went right from Fiji with Rosie. We actually had the same flight together to Florida. But I went right from junior Pan Pacs to FSU. And then a month later, I was leaving to Argentina for Youth Olympics. So at that time, I was still getting ready for all these experiences and also getting used to the college experience. And what I loved most about that experience first year was, I kind of mentioned it a little bit about junior pan packs, but really having a big team to train with every day and having a group of girls that are really there to motivate you and people to push you in practice was something that I didn't really have all the time before, coming from a smaller club in Sudbury. So that's something that I definitely really loved. And then also getting used to yards, because obviously we swim short course and long course meters in Canada. So it was kind of fun for the first few meets. Every time you swim, you go a best time because you don't have any yards time. So that was a lot of fun, and just seeing really how much I could push myself, and every time how much I could get better just by a little bit. And the way that season went was ACCs was really great. I ended up going a bunch of best times. And as I mentioned before, I was silver medalist in the 200 breaststroke, and I broke the school record, which was awesome. And then went on to compete at NCAAs, which was not as great as I would have wanted to, but again, it was all kind of a learning experience your freshman year because you're getting used to so many different things. And then went to Canadian trials that year where I qualified for FISU, so World University Games in Italy. So freshman year was kind of a whirlwind. There was so much going on between, trying to compete for Canada and getting used to being a freshman in the US and swimming there, but it was an awesome experience and I loved every second of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I forgot about that you were at FISU's as well. So 3 international teams for you, 2 junior, 1 senior. That's really good. Couple questions coming in. First, what stands out to you about the Markham Aquatic Club?
Oh, so many great things about the Markham Aquatic Club. I think what stands out to me the most is how elite everyone is, and just the level of seriousness, but also having fun at the same time. I think everyone in the group that I'm swimming with now really cares about swimming, and people are really there to push each other every day in the best way possible. And it's just a really positive environment, and it feels like a really high performance environment, and I'm really being pushed every day by not even the same people. There's always someone, it feels like, at practice who you can race and who's there to cheer you on. So really just a high performance and great and fun environment for sure.
Great. And then one of your teammates says, what's your favorite part about training with the group right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think my favorite part would be, I feel like we're really at a point where every week I'm walking away going like, wow, I really did something this week that I didn't think I could do before. So I feel like we're all being challenged a lot. But it's a really good feeling to be able to look back at some weeks and look at either the volume or some practices that you did and just look back and just a bunch of practices that I went in kind of with no expectations, but really came out feeling like I have accomplished something. So
great. One question I have, did you have any problems adjusting in Florida to the amount of sun?
Yeah, at first it's like you have to like put a lot of sunscreen on, which is like, I definitely got a few really bad sunburns for sure. And another thing is, I mean, it's not really too much of an issue for me because I don't swim too much backstroke, but in the backstroke of my IMs, it's always different, like with the sun, because you're used to in a pool, you have kind of the roof to guide you. So it was kind of just an adjustment in that way, especially backstroke was kind of tough, but.
Mm-hmm. What are some trade-offs you have made to focus on swimming? For example, not going to parties or skipping Netflix, etc.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like that's something that anyone, when you get to a certain level in swimming, is you have to start sacrificing some things. But in my head, it's never really been much of a sacrifice because of all the things I've gotten to do with swimming and all the places that I've gotten to go. Yeah, of course, in high school, it was definitely tough. You know, some of your friends are going out on the weekend or maybe staying up late and doing some things that like you would want to do. But also those are the people who have never gotten the chance to go to Fiji or to Italy or to swim at a D1 school in the US. So there are small sacrifices, and the way I see it is one day, like definitely not soon, but one day I'll be done swimming and there'll be time to do a bunch of other things like that. But for the time being, it is sacrifices, but it's definitely what you get out of it. And I feel like what I'm getting out of swimming is worth so much more than the typical high school or college experience. So definitely time management is super important. You got to be able to be okay with saying no and missing out on some things and recognizing that where swimming is going to take you in the long run is so much more than anything else you could get.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Those are 3 questions from the senior group coming in here. So some of you younger ones that are on, you should ask some questions to Nina surrounding what she needed to do through high school to get ready for university in terms of the scholarships or the process of selecting a university, right? And some parents might want to know that as well. So, I'll lobby that one kind of free here is, talk about the process you went through grade 11 and 12 to make your selection, either from the point of view of whether you wanted to be in Canada or the US. And, I don't know this, but I'm assuming that you had multiple offers from different schools and different locations and probably even different divisions. How did you filter them out?
Yeah, for sure. So when I think back to high school, it's a really exciting time when you have the opportunity to know that you can swim post-secondary, because that experience as a student athlete is just incredible. So I remember being really excited about that. And in grade 11, when I started talking to some schools, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to the US or stay in Canada. I definitely wanted to keep my options open. So I did do that. I signed up for college swimming, where coaches can recruit you on there for the US. And I also talked to some of the big schools in Canada, like U of T, UBC. I knew for sure I didn't want to stay in Sudbury. I kind of wanted to go somewhere that had a little bit more of a serious varsity program and just expand my horizons, I guess. So going into grade 12, the way I filtered out where I wanted to take my recruiting trips to, because you only get 5 in the US, I think it's the same rule now. It might be a little bit different, but really just talking to coaches, what I was looking for was a connection with the coach, was a program that was going to be serious. And also for me, I knew that when I was looking in the US, I wanted coaches that were going to be serious about me performing well in the NCAA, but also give me the opportunity to come back home and be serious about still wanting to represent my country, because I knew that after my last year making the junior team, I knew that the next step is making senior teams, that that's something that I really wanted to step into and take that on full force. So after that, I narrowed it down to 3 schools, which were FSU, South Carolina, and Iowa. And then I was also going to take a recruiting trip to University of Toronto. And I think that's, for me anyways, the recruiting trips were really important, because I wasn't really too sure what I wanted going into the recruiting trips. I mean, I knew I was going to commit to one of the 4 schools, but I really feel like as an athlete, when you get to go on those recruiting trips, you really get to see the dynamic of the team. You get to see the coaches, how they interact with each other, the team, how they interact with each other. And the big thing for me in making my decision was I wanted a team that felt like a family, and that was also going to be serious and take me in the direction that I wanted to go. So that's kind of everything I got at FSU. And just the support that they had for their athletes as an NCAA athlete, between nutrition, gear, equipment, and stuff like that, it kind of just blew me away. So I ended up canceling my last recruiting trip to U of T, which I do feel a little bit bad about, but I think at that point I was so excited and I knew that FSU was where I wanted to be. So that's kind of how I made my decision, but definitely for anyone going forward in this process, I would just say don't limit your options, because FSU definitely wasn't my first choice going into my recruiting trips, but as you talk to coaches more and visit schools, you'll be able to see between academics and swimming what fits for you. So I would say just definitely don't close any doors and make sure you leave your options open.
Great. What are your thoughts about the pools you grew up swimming at versus the pools you now have access to train and compete in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't know if anyone's ever been to Sudbury. It's an 8-lane, 50-meter pool, kind of grungy a little bit. It's definitely an old pool. It's a big pool, and I will never complain about getting the chance to swim long course, especially because it's the only long course pool in the north. But definitely not as nice as, say, the Markham pool or my pool at school or Toronto Pan Am. And I feel like I'm very lucky when I get to go swim in these nice and big pools. But honestly, when I think back to the pool I grew up swimming in Sudbury, all I feel is like my heart swell, because I just feel like I had so many milestones in that pool. And although it wasn't the nicest pool or the biggest pool or the newest pool, we still got to like get some really good work in there. And that's my pool growing up. So definitely like love all the new and nice pools I get to swim in, but I wouldn't regret swimming in Sudbury for the world.
Right. You and I share a lot of similarities with coming from a smaller town, kind of coming from challenging circumstances, but, the work's the work, and that's what gets you there. And also having appreciation for what's available to us now, being in Markham, and being appreciative of everything that we had going through our development. So Your next question is, do you have a favorite inspirational quote, and why is it your favorite?
That's a really good question. I could list a few, actually. One of my favorite quotes is, without failure, you will never know success. And I really like that quote because I feel like a lot of times when I encounter failure myself, my immediate response is, oh, negative, like I failed. But in swimming, in school, in life, if you're failing, it's probably because you're trying to do something incredible. So now I try not to look as failure as something negative, but as learning opportunities. And every time you fail, you get to learn something from it and bring it with you next time. And maybe the next time you, whether it's a set or a test, you'll do better and you won't fail, and it feels that just that much better. Another quote I like, and this one's actually, I was talking to Tessa about this not too long ago. This one's actually from Tessa, is keep it simple. And that's something that I try and keep with me in swimming, just because I feel like I take it very seriously and I'm very serious about what I do. But at the end of the day, I feel like I need to remind myself sometimes to just have fun and enjoy the process and enjoy every moment of my time swimming, because it really goes by way too fast. So keep it simple is another one that I like.
Excellent. At what age did you realize that the sacrifices weren't really sacrifices, but this was something you loved and the benefits outweighed the typical high school life?
Yeah. I think definitely grade 12, when I had that breakthrough and I was able to qualify for the junior national team. And at that point I had already committed to FSU. It's kind of all these pieces that just kind of fit together. And I was like, wow, like I just really felt grateful for all the opportunities that swimming had given me. And whether like that's for someone who is planning to go on swim D1 or whether you're just going to swim at another school, I just feel like as a student athlete, it's just an experience that so many other people can't get. And at that point, when all those things kind of started coming together and I was presented with all these opportunities, that's kind of when that clicked for me, was all the sacrifices that I made. They weren't really sacrifices. They were just getting me to where I wanted to go. And yeah, I would say it was probably around that time.
Knowing that you're such a positive person, what are some good tips you can give to the younger athletes to help motivate themselves?
Yeah, for sure. So I think definitely being serious about what you're doing is very important, and paying attention to things, watching your technique, your speed, that stuff is all incredibly important. But most of all, just have fun. Like I think sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and we take the sport too seriously. But at the end of the day, you're here with your friends. And even at meets and stuff, I remember I used to get so nervous, like so anxious. And at the end of the day, swimming is a sport that we all do because we can and because we want to. I don't think anyone's really like, I guess, forced to at the end of the day. So just remember that like it's all fun. It's a sport. You're supposed to be having fun doing it and really just enjoy every moment of it, because it goes by way too fast. And even like I remember like high school just went by way too fast, and all those club meets that now like I can't go back to. So that's something I try and keep in mind now, is all these experiences I get as a collegiate athlete. I just try and enjoy the moment.
What role do you think athletes have in advocating for access to pools with the governing bodies and or the government?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is that like in regards to like in Ontario?
I think it's probably with regards to Markham.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a voice and everyone has a platform, and you should utilize your voice and your platform for whatever you believe in. So I don't know if anyone knows about like the situation in Sudbury, but in Sudbury we have the Yenotahami Olympic Gold Pool, and it's been closed for about a year now since COVID. And in the summertime, with one of my best friends who's the captain of the LU swim team, we had made a petition online that people were signing to try and get the pool open, and we're really making a lot of noise, reaching out to TV stations and stuff to try and get people in the community to realize how important having that pool open is. So I can't really speak too much in regards to Markham and stuff down here because I'm still pretty new. I don't know too much about it yet, but I know that what we were doing in Sudbury was really putting pressure on the media. And so people in the community could recognize that closing a pool might seem like not a big deal to someone who doesn't understand swimming, but for athletes and people growing up, it's you need the opportunity to swim and to have that pool. So I definitely think that everyone has a voice and a platform, and you should utilize it.
Yeah, so I think you answered the question months ago when you personally did that online petition, which I signed, by the way. And so you took an advocacy role and got people behind it. So I think that's a democratic way to do it, and getting the media involved is the most, I think the most effective tool, right? And one thing that's kind of faded out of the limelight is the notion of childhood obesity rates in North America. And the fact that having these facilities open is a health and wellness vehicle, right? Not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And now we've got a prolonged period of time where people have been stuck in their rooms on the screens, right? Zoom this, Zoom that, and thank goodness for the technology, but the amount of time that they're spending on these things, you got to really be careful with that. So the health and wellness side of having these pools open, plus the concerns of the obesity rates in North America are really, really important things to hit home. Great. So this is the third question by one of your teammates on your end of the pool. How do you think being an athlete has helped you to be a better person?
Yeah, that's a really good question from whoever that might be. Wink, wink. I think being an athlete is, it has shaped me so much as a person, because the things that you learn through swimming and through athletics can translate into so many other areas. So for instance, just with swimming, in high school early on, I had to develop time management skills, because obviously when you're swimming, 7, 8, 9 practices a week and going to school on top of that. And for me, I was always involved in music as well. So you have to juggle a lot of things. So time management, that's one of the skills that sticks out to me right away. Also, another skill is just being able to work for what you want, and to put in hard work and recognize that it might not always pay off when you want it to, but eventually it always does. And that for me has translated into my studies. It's translated into my relationships with others, with my parents, and pretty much just every aspect. So I think being an athlete goes so much beyond more than just what you accomplish in the pool. It's a lifestyle, and the skills that you learn as an athlete are things that you'll carry with you into every aspect after you decide to stop swimming. That's the way I see it.
Wonderful. Do you practice visualization or goal setting? If so, how have you found it?
Yeah, I do. I think visualization and goal setting is very important, because at the end of the day, there's this quote, I'm trying to think of it, I don't want to mess it up. It's something like, if you don't know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable. I think I said that. But I really like that quote, because I think at the end of the day, if you don't know exactly where you want to go, then how are you going to set up your daily routines to get to where you want to go? So for me, my goal setting starts off very broad, and then I kind of make it smaller into like more manageable tasks. So when I think of right now, like my goal is Olympic trials. So I have little sticky notes all around the place where I'm staying, beside my bed, on my mirror, on my bathroom mirror, that just says Olympic trials. So it's these little reminders that remind me every day what I'm working for. So I have that big goal of performing well at Olympic trials. But then breaking that down into smaller goals, I have an athlete's journal that I use every day that sets my goals for the day when I start, that analyzes my performance. And also a lot of smaller goals, more process goals that I use at the pool and in my dryland workouts to help me just get better in that sense as well. So definitely my goals start pretty broad and kind of get more narrow. And visualization is something that I think I've always struggled with, just because I'm a little bit hyperactive. So sometimes I have a hard time sitting down to do it. But I do think mindfulness is a really important skill to have, and just being able to take those few minutes to sit down and really visualize. So I try and practice that every night, just a few minutes of mindfulness, and to really think about tomorrow's workout, how I want to be before the pool, what my attitude's going to be like, how I'm going to be thinking during warm up, and just kind of all those steps to get me to where I want to go.
Okay. The next question, I think you're getting the most questions of everybody here. So this one here is talking about what usually do you do if you don't feel ready, or if you feel nervous before a meet? If you have had any of those situations, right? What have you done? What have you learned? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I can definitely share like what I do personally. Again, like I think anxiety and nervousness before meets is totally normal. I know a lot of people experience it, so definitely whatever, like, I don't want anyone to think of like what I do is like the best thing, but I can definitely share that. I do tend to have like a lot of nerves and anxiousness before meets sometimes. And for me, what has helped me the most in the past is having a relationship with my coach that I'm able to kind of voice how I'm feeling and voice those concerns. And with that, kind of talk it through with my coach. So if I'm thinking back to like Dean in high school, I could kind of let him know, okay, I'm feeling this way. And he would kind of talk to me and remind me of the things that I had done over the past few months in practice and just reminding me how ready I am. And then from then on, just focusing on not the outcome, but more the process and all the things I've done to get to where I am and why I deserve to be like racing at this meet. So it's something that with Dean, the coach that I grew up with, took a while to get to that relationship, but because I was with him for so long, I was really good at it. And then it's something that I had to relearn all over again when I went to university and really just have that relationship with the coach. And the same kind of thing that I have with Sean now is just being able to voice how you're feeling sometimes. And just like, I guess, voice how you're feeling and to not be ashamed of it. And sometimes it's okay to have someone help you out and give you a few words of advice when you're not able to do it yourself.
Well, I'm glad to hear you feel comfortable talking to me about that and opening up. That's great. So one of the swimmers is asking, do you have any breaststroke swimmers' favorite breaststroke sets?
Breaststroke swimmers' favorite breaststroke sets.
I think that's what it is getting at.
I also got another question. This is kind of related that says, and this was a direct message, so this is kind of related. It says, what's your favorite breaststroke swimmer?
Okay, yeah.
I think growing up, Rebecca Stoney was my favorite breaststroke swimmer. She would always wear these pink arena suits that I thought were so cool. And I remember being like 10 years old and wanting a pink arena suit and wanting to be just like Rebecca Stoney. My favorite breaststroke swimmer now, I guess, is a little more personal. It's one of my teammates who I swam with freshman year at FSU who ended up going back home to Finland and going pro. And now she's a 106 flat long course 100 breaststroker making her Olympic team. Her name's Ida Hulko. And she's someone who I was personally very close with and who has a great attitude. So she's definitely my favorite breaststroke swimmer. And as far as favorite breaststroke sets, I don't really know if I can remember like a specific set. I do remember when I was in
3/800s pulling this tonight.
Yeah, precisely. Favorite breaststroke set. But if it's like a set coming from someone else, I think that's what the question was asking, like another breaststroke swimmer. I remember being in grade 9 and being invited to like the Swim Ontario camps for strokes. And at that time, the coach was Joseph Nagy, who was coaching Martha McCabe. And I can't really remember the exact set, but I remember just doing 50s beside her. And, you know, she was really, really fast. And just me being a young swimmer and being exposed to that, like I remember really, really loving that experience and getting to swim a set with, you know, a Canadian Olympian, because I was in my head thinking someday I want that to be me. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but.
What does Nina advise to do when you feel upset or disappointed about how you have done on a meet or competition?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And if I'm being completely honest, I think growing up, I was the kid that didn't always react well when I didn't swim well. I was, you know, the throw your goggles, like get really upset. And that's something that I had to learn getting older, especially being on other teams, is that, you know, that doesn't really do anyone, including yourself, any good to get that upset about a swim. I think definitely when you have those swims that you're disappointed with, it's okay to feel what you're feeling and to recognize that maybe you want it to be better, and to talk with your coach about how you're feeling and maybe like ask his perspective on what went wrong and to learn from it. But at the end of the day, it's not going to do you any good to dwell about it and to leave it lingering. Like for instance, if it's the first day of the meet and you don't necessarily have a great swim, my best advice would to just be try and not let that carry over into your other swims, because it's not always an accurate representation of where you're at. And if I can give any example on that and just not letting your bad swims carry over into your next swims is Mabel lent me Elizabeth Beisel's book that I read last weekend. And she was talking in one chapter about being at World Championships and warming up for her 4 IM. And in her 4 IM pace, she was hitting 44 seconds long course meters, which for the world record holder in the 4 IM was way, way off her pace. and, you know, she was able to talk with her coach after that and being really nervous after warm up and kind of get in the right mindset. And she ended up winning gold at world champs right after that. So that's just another example of how, like, you can be disappointed. You're allowed to be disappointed in a swim, and definitely take the time to acknowledge what you're feeling. But I would just say that it's not the end of the world, and it's not going to dictate where you're going to go in the future or even what the rest of your meet is going to look like.
Actually, two questions came in and they're almost identical, but from different people. It's pretty neat. What does a typical day in the life of a university level swimmer look like pre-COVID? And the second question, what does your typical day look like at university, swimming, studying, sleep, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And I hope it doesn't, like, I feel like when I'm about to say this, it's going to sound like a lot, but it really doesn't feel like a lot, like when you're doing it, because this is just like, you know, this is the life we choose as swimmers. So when I can think back to my schedule at school, it was, you know, swim practice from 6 to 7:30. And then I would always have weights from 9 to 10. And in between 10 till 2 o'clock, that's when I would have class, when I would grab lunch. Sometimes I would go to the training room and get treatment, whether that's massage, chiro, some other things. And then I would have practice at night again from 2 to 4, and then dry land after practice. And then once I get home, it's usually making dinner, spending some more time doing homework, reading, journaling, and then trying to get to bed early because you got to do the same thing all over again the next day. So that's kind of like the typical life of a student athlete. So it's nothing that you guys haven't seen before, school and swimming and fitting time into study. But as long as you set kind of like a schedule and some boundaries and don't procrastinate, it's really not anything that's unmanageable.
So, question for me. Do you remember your worst meet ever?
Yeah. I do remember my worst meet ever.
Okay, so you had to think there for a minute. And do you remember your best meet ever?
Yeah.
See how fast that one was?
Yep.
Interesting, right? Like you can have several failures, you can have lousy swim meets, and you know, you had to really pause and kind of think about it for a moment in your history of your swimming career, but yet the really great times really shine, right? They come back to you in an instant. So looking back at your worst meet ever, what happened? Why do you think it happened? And how did it affect you moving forward?
So this is probably going to be an answer that surprises some people, but I think my worst meet ever was Youth Olympics, disappointing enough. And there was definitely some issues going into that. I had pneumonia at that meet, and I remember talking with my club coach and also with my university coach, and them kind of going back and forth on if I should even go to the meet. And at the end of the day, I decided that I did want to go. It was an experience that I wanted to, regardless of how I was feeling, I wanted to really just try and go and represent Canada and like live that experience. So I'd say it was a bad meet because I started off the meet with adding 4 seconds in my 100 breaststroke, which, you know, coming off of a silver medal at Junior Pan Packs, I know a lot of people were like talking about me going into the meet, and I was expecting a final and even a medal. And obviously just with like health-wise, the way I was feeling, I probably wasn't in the best spot mentally. Like that was incredibly disappointing. And talking about that and like disappointments is I kind of needed a day after that to like really refocus, and it ended up, I think I finaled in my 50 breaststroke, didn't go a best time or anything, but because a 50 was just long enough to not hurt my lungs, I was able to do it okay. But so the one thing from that was when I look back and if I can remember my times, I don't remember them exactly. I remember around what I added and being upset about that. But what I remember the most from that, if we're not talking about swimming, is just the experience. I remember just really getting to cheer for the other people representing Canada and living up that experience, because I knew that this was the closest thing that I could get to an Olympic experience until the next Olympic trials. So I remember calling my club coach at that meet and being so upset and feeling sorry for myself because I wasn't swimming well, and him just telling me, you're at Youth Olympic Games. Even though you might not be swimming the way you want to, you can still walk away from here learning so much more than you would have going in. So that's my take on my worst swimming meet ever. Not the worst experience ever, probably just worst performance, but I still got so much out of that meet, which was awesome.
Okay, question. How do you get your split times to be pretty equal?
Is that talking in a race?
I think so.
Sorry.
Mabel, stop calling her in the middle of her interview.
Oh my gosh, sorry, it's the girl I'm living with. Um, how do I get my split times to be pretty equal in a race? That's a really good question. It's still something that I haven't mastered, but that's okay because you always need something to work towards and more things to learn from. But I think just for me, one thing is getting my stroke counts, especially for breaststroke. I always count all the time, whether it's warm up, main set in practice, even in a race. Like, I don't know, some coaches, new coaches that I've had have been surprised when I've come out of my race talking about my stroke counts. And that's just kind of something that I always have going on in my head and I can't really turn it off. But I think for me, it helps to know if my stroke counts are going up, okay, what's going wrong? What do I need to focus on? Am I not holding the water the same? And when my stroke counts are closer together, I know that my splits are as well, if that makes sense. So that's kind of a strategy that I use, especially for breaststroke, because I think it's really useful.
So for the swimmers out there, and I guess the parents too, is that in breaststroke and fly, your general rule of thumb is +4, right? So if you're out in 30, you're trying to be out in 30, back in 34. If you're out in 110, you're trying to come back in 114, right? And where freestyle and backstroke, we're looking at basically +2 for everything except for over 400s, okay? So the split times to be pretty equal. That may be the strategy that your coach is giving you for the 400, but if you look at the Olympic 400s, they're not even split. They'll be pretty close, and the really good ones are tremendously close, but kind of your guideline is to be no more than +2, right? And in breaststroke, no more than +4. Adam Peaty might be a little bit higher than that just because he is so amazingly fast that it doesn't matter what his second split is because nobody's going to catch him. A couple more here. So how do you not get tired when you're swimming a lot in a race and you want to continue going faster?
How do you not get tired?
How do you not get tired?
I think it's inevitable. Personally, I think it's inevitable to get tired during a race, especially, you know, when you're trying to go really fast. And like, I'm thinking back to like some of my best times, like it's inevitable. You're never not going to get tired, but it's the way you handle the tiredness. And that I think begins up here. First of all is, you can't give into those thoughts of, oh, I'm tired, I'm dying. What is the person next to me doing? You just got to stay in your own lane. And when I start getting tired from breaststroke, I immediately think back to finishing my kick, hitting my landing zone, as Sean and I have talked about a lot, really getting the most out of every pull. So I don't think it's how do you not get tired, it's how do you deal with the being tired. And that's just number one, starting mentally, is not letting yourself feel as though you're tired, and just coming back to the basics and just technique to be able to get yourself through the race.
Yeah, and the other side of that, swimmers, is fitness. That's what you train for, right? You're training to be able to perform at a certain level. And, you know, sometimes we talk about this with some of the distance swimmers or mid-distance swimmers is, you know, if you imagine you've got a go-kart track, the go-kart track is a certain amount of distance, and so the race is, you know, 10 laps of this go-kart race. You know, the idea is to be able to maximize your fuel in that tank so that by the last 2 feet, you're just running out of gas just as you get to the finish line. And the way you do that, you know, as humans, is be able to train your body and learn to have sense of pace, right? And it's that tipping point of, you know, being able to go out fast enough and hold speed just long enough that you can hold it. And then just as your race is almost finished, it's everything you got to just drain the tank, hit the wall, and then. Phew.
Well said.
I've had a few years to practice that line, right? How do you make sure that you don't go too fast in the beginning? No such thing as too fast. It's too hard. So she's asking you, how do you make sure that you don't go too fast in the beginning?
That's such a good question, because that's something that Sean has been working with me for like the past month, especially, is like he said, you can't go out too fast, but you can go out too hard. So for me, when I go out too hard, it'll look mechanical. It'll kind of be a little bit forced. So one thing that Sean's been telling me, and that I've been trying to work every time I'm doing a fast set, sprint set, or when we race on Saturdays, is off of my dive, the first 3 strokes, kind of making those longer and just easy speed and really making sure I'm hitting my landing zone properly, because at the end of the day, the first 3 strokes aren't going to make or break you, but the energy that you might save from not overworking those first 3 strokes will really help you out in your last, especially the 50 meters of the long course 100. So that's something that Sean and I have been working on a lot.
Yeah, and guys, we're finding like the world of swimming is just getting faster and faster. And, you know, you see people like Blake Peroni that just, you know, went out super fast at Worlds, you know, and held on. And they're finding the ability to go out really fast and maintain. And it takes a little bit. If you go way back to the 80s, when Janet Evans was going out really fast, and then her successor, Brooke Bennett from Florida, ever since she was a young girl, she would be going out really fast and then kind of having trouble holding on in the 800. But she just learned how to go farther and farther and farther without slowing down. And then she won the 96 Olympics, and I think the 2000, I'll have to go back and check, but 96 and 2000 Olympics in the 800 free. It was a process of learning how to hold pace, right? And, you know, we're looking at open water swimmers, the greatest open water swimmers. Those guys are in the 14 minutes for 1500 long course. Like they're fast, right? They're holding under a minute's long course for 1500 and they're swimming 10K, right? So fast is good and fast is what we need to be. It's just if you go out hard, there's nowhere to go but down, right? You only tie up, you only seize up. If it's hard, it's not like you're going to loosen up in the race and then, you know, find your stride. It's the other way around, right? You hit your stride, keep it easy speed, you're fast and building. And the difference, you know, for someone, say a guy in the 100 fly, if we're talking about +4 splitting, if they're going out in 26.0 and back in 30, which is good splitting, but if they go out hard in 25 and they come back in 33, and they go 58, but they went out blazing fast, okay? But the person that goes out in 26.0, easy speed, okay, maybe it's only 8 or 9 tenths of a second behind, but their second 50 is 3 seconds faster, right? And that's the art of racing. That's the learning of how to be out fast and be able to lift or fast and hold. Okay, next question. What books are you reading now? Do you have a favorite book?
I love reading. That's a really good question. I love reading. And I'm usually the kind of person that reads like 3 books at the same time. So I'm reading 2 books right now. I always let myself read like 1 novel and something that I'm always just really interested in reading, the kind of thing that like if I wanted to read it in a day, I could. And I also usually have an educational book, like something about learning better habits or something inspirational that I limit myself to 1 chapter a day on. So what I'm reading right now is American Sniper. It's a book that Finley Knox lent me. Mixed reviews on it so far. I'll let you guys know what I think when I'm finished it. And something else that I'm reading is The Power of Moments. And that kind of just talks about being able to create your own good moments and not waiting for them to happen. So those are the 2 books I'm reading right now. And an all-time favorite book, there's definitely different categories. If we're talking novels, I can't even pick one. Don't even ask me that. There's so many good ones. A favorite book that I just finished reading is Atomic Habits. And that one just talked about how to implement new habits in your life, but the author really like dumbed it down to like super easy habits that you can introduce and also just processes that you can include in your everyday life to make you a little bit better.
Such as?
Well, I think I've talked to you about this one. One of my weaknesses is pull-ups. So it talked about when you want to get better at something, it should take you less than 2 minutes to do it at first. And you have to do it frequently. And you also have to make it obvious and satisfying. So if you want to create or implement a new habit, you can't, leave it under your bed because out of sight, out of mind, you're not going to see it. And it also talked about when you implement a new habit, pair it with a habit that you're going to do automatically. So for me, in my pull-ups, I don't know if you guys can see, I live in the basement. So every time I walk down those stairs, I do 2 pull-ups. So that's just an automatic cue. When I get downstairs, I do 2 pull-ups. Or another habit that I implemented was when I brush my teeth, I do a 3-point wall stretch, because every day you're going to brush your teeth, but then it's just pairing a habit with a habit that you already to do to try and like implement new ones. I don't know if that made sense or not.
That's smart. No, it makes great sense. And you're not going to forget because you're doing it every day.
It was a really cool book. If anyone like wants the title of it, I can like message you about it. It was awesome. Would recommend that to literally anyone.
how should a swimmer start off their day to be productive?
What I like to do, okay, and again, this is all me being gung-ho because I just finished this awesome book about habits. So what I've been doing recently is when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I text my mom that I love her. I know that's kind of like weird, but I feel like that starts my day with like a happy mood. And I also do a 10-minute yoga challenge every morning. It's just 10 minutes, 10 minutes out of your day. And from there, I'm always loosening up from the day before from workout and kind of setting the tone for the rest of my day. So when you start off your day with something positive and something productive, you really feel like you can get the most out of your day. So me starting my day with texting my mom that I love her, it's someone that I love. So it puts me in a good mood, and then doing something productive that sets the tone for the rest of my day and workout.
Nice. So here's one thing that's bouncing around in my mind that you're good at analyzing and thinking and then giving an answer. So certainly this past year and a bit has been super challenging on multiple levels, right? Like things just aren't normal. School hasn't been normal. We don't have a normal dry land routine. We don't have a normal practice routine. And one of the things that the audience will come to understand is that we're doing 3-hour workouts, but we're doing one a day. It's basically between 11 and 2 or 12 and 3. And the weekly volume is really close to what we'd be doing, like you named an hour and a half practice at Florida State in the morning and then 2 hours in the afternoon. I know there's dry land on top of that, but the actual water time is 3.5 hours in a double day, a double practice day, where we're currently doing 3 hours, except for Saturdays or 2, but the long course. How have you found the difference? Right? And what kind of comments as a swimmer do you have about that? So, when you're in Tokyo this summer and someone from New Zealand comes up to you and says, what's your training like? And you say, well, I've been training 3 hours a day in the middle of the day and going 6 workouts a week. And they say, well, how was that, Nina? What would you say?
Yeah, I will admit it's a little bit inconvenient with school, just like the middle of the day. But I think it was something I was a little bit nervous about. Like when I first came down, I was like, oh, I hope this changes soon. Now I'm on the complete flip side of that. I hope it doesn't change because I like it so much. One thing I struggled with at first was obviously it's a 3-hour practice. We're going a lot of volume. It was something that I wasn't used to. So towards the end of the workouts, I would find myself burning out. But that's been something that's interesting to see. Every practice I get a little bit better, and I'm able to hold on longer and finish a 3-hour practice. Like for instance, today after like a 3-hour practice, like with the best time in an 800 pull, which is something that I definitely wouldn't have been able to do a month ago. It's also really nice because in between practices, you're never waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you have 21 hours to recover in between practice. So that gives me a lot of time to get my schoolwork done, to practice my music, to read, to recover, to go to bed early. Yeah, so I actually love it. I'm resting the most I ever have, I'm recovering the most I ever have, and I'm also swimming the most I ever have. So it's interesting how that all worked out.
Mm-hmm. What time do you recommend a swimmer that's 10 and under to wake up or to go to bed?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, like for 10 and under, I don't know. I feel like that's definitely, if I can think back to like when I was 10 and under, I feel like my parents always told me like when to go to bed. But what I can say is I feel like getting into a nighttime routine is really important. So whether all your electronics off by a certain time, and then you read for a little bit or you journal, and then you're making it consistent. So you're going to bed at the same time every day and waking up at the same time every day. And that's something that I've just tried implementing myself a little bit in the past few weeks, and that you're allowing yourself at least for me, it's at least 9 hours of sleep. That can vary on the person. But I don't know, I guess like, I don't know, if you're 10 and under, I'm sure you have school in the morning. So don't go to bed like later than 9 o'clock, I would guess, if you're waking up for school.
Coach Sean says 8 o'clock or earlier if you're 10 and under, but
yeah, again, I don't know. I feel like I don't want to get in trouble with anyone's parents if they make you go to bed earlier and I'm saying 9. Yeah, don't listen to me. I don't know. Make sure you get a good sleep. That's all I can say.
But you touched on a really great thing, right? That is fairly recent, is the advent of electronics in everybody's hands, right? And several years ago, we went to this meet called the Paul Bergen International, and it was in Portland, Oregon, or Tualatin Hills, Oregon, just outside of Portland. We'd fly in, and it was a wonderful swim meet. Just treated the athletes like gold. Those of you that were there, you know what I'm talking about. And the first day we came down from waking up, and they came down to the breakfast spot at the hotel, and everybody's sitting around on their phones, and you got 4 people that are sitting at a table, and everybody's looking at their phone, and it's dead quiet. It's dead quiet. Nobody's talking. Everybody's half asleep. They're just kind of in their own minds. And so that day I said, you know, new rule for our club is going to be that when we're at the dinner table, the dining table, breakfast, lunch, dinner, that you leave the cell phones in your room, right? And so, you know, the next day there was, and it's very interesting to see how attached some people are to their phones, that they just have such a tremendous pull to it that they'd have it in their pocket, but they still brought it to breakfast, right? And every time it would buzz, they'd kind of check in their back pocket. But anyway, we kind of got through that phase. But the point is, the next morning, let's say 95% of the people were really adhering to the rule. And there was talking, it was kind of vivacious, there was an energy in the morning, people were alive and alert and awake. And right then, I knew that we were onto something. And about 2 years later, I had a conversation with Dr. Greg Wells. Those of you that know who Dr. Greg Wells is, he's kind of a world-renowned sports physiologist, much more than that, but he's worked with many world record holders, Olympic gold medalists. And I still have his email on my phone, is that, you know, the phones are an absolute addiction, right? They're a necessary addiction in today's life, but they are addictive, and they're designed to be that way, right? The inventors of these things designed them to be very addictive, and they're fun. We've got every piece of information that mankind has dug up and investigated. Everything's at the palm, at our fingertips. It's a super powerful device, but it also has those negative attributes. So one of the things with the screen lighting is that it goes directly through to the pineal gland. That radiation that comes from the phone goes through your eyes, through the optic nerve, goes right into the pineal gland. And that pineal gland is what tells your body or your brain that it's either time to wake up or time to go to sleep. And so when you're doing this, it's constantly sending those messages to the pineal gland: stay up, it's daytime, keep awake, keep awake. So you might find, many of you, if you're on this to the last moment, it takes you a while to fall asleep. So the recommended guideline is about, they say 40 minutes to an hour, but let's just say an hour before you're actually wanting to go to sleep, is that you shut that off, because then your mind starts going through its natural, like kind of the circadian rhythms of being able to tell your body it's time to shut down and go to sleep. Right? So that was a really good thing you brought up, Nina. And, you know, for a while there were some people that were really upset about not having their phones at breakfast or that sort of thing. And you know, of course, there's a few people that pushed the envelope. So we just confiscated all the phones, right? It was just like, if you're on team travel with the club, you are agreeing to go under our rules. And our rules, when we go as Markham Aquatic Club, will be that, you know, there's a time where these need to be shut off. Right? There's a blackout period when we go to certain meets and heats and finals, that we don't want any TV, iPads, phones, electronics, and we have that period to shut down to give your nervous system a chance to rest and recover. Because your nervous system, that electrical kind of system, needs a shutdown, just like your muscles need to rest, or just like your body needs to rest, and your brain needs to wash itself when you go and have your sleep. So really good thing you brought up, Nina. And I'll go back. This is kind of an interesting story because, oh, we got 1 minute to go, Kelly says. So last little thing, we were at Easterns in Laval, and one night we had the whole team come to finals, and nobody had a cell phone the whole time that night. It was the best night we came together. We were all kind of like, I won't say betting on races, but we were, you know, who do you think's going to win? Who do you think's going to win? And we remember watching Alex Axon go head to head with a couple of guys from Point Claire and a guy from Nepean, and it was one of the closest 1,500 races we've seen. And Alex ended up out sprinting him and winning in the end. So I remember that night really clearly, because it was really fun and it was a great team event, and we didn't have these distracting us. So great point, Nina. I want to thank you very much for being our guest. I think this is probably the most successful with number of questions, and we're hitting an hour. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you guys for having me, and I'm really happy to be here at Markham Aquatic Club. So I look forward to meeting you guys in person one day.
All right. Bye, gang.